I know we all have Pesach on the brain, but we're still talking a little bit about Parshat Tzav as we read that this coming Shabbat, which is, of course, the Shabbat that's known as Shabbat Hagadol, the great Shabbat, the Shabbat before the original Yetziat Mitzrayim, before the original time that the Jews left Egypt. And here's some ideas we're going into about the fourth Aliyah and stuff back in the fourth chapter, the eighth chapter in the book of Vayikra. What happens here in the book of the eighth chapter, the beginning of the eighth chapter, is that Moshe gathers all the Jewish people together, and that's in Pasuk Gimel, that Kol Eidah Hakel El Petach Ol Moed. Moshe is supposed to get Aaron along with the clothing and the oil and then the karban chatat that he's supposed to bring, and gather the whole group of people, Petach Ol Moed, next to the tent in order to inaugurate Aaron as the leader of Bnei Yisrael. And this is something that we saw not too long ago. We talked a lot about in the aftermath of the golden calf, the two sort of parts of the episode of the Mishkan. How the second half of the Mishkan, or the second telling of the Mishkan story, when they actually do it, Vayakel Moshe Kahal, he gathers the community together, and the Midrashim talk about that. This is not just symbolic; it was a legal necessity. The appointing of Aaron required public witnessing. And maybe part of it was, we think of an accusations come later on in the Torah, where Korach says, you and Moshe, look at you, and you placed your brother on top of us. And maybe there's a sense of nepotism there. So this had to show that this was a divine choice, and the humans had to recognize it. So it's showing there's a divine commandment. It shows there's communal acknowledgement of it, and publicly that everybody knows it together. So this is something that God chose, but almost God had to show the people. And at least at the time, again, later on, we'll have Korach, different people, Korach who goes and doubts the legitimacy of the leadership and the style of leadership of Moshe and Aaron. But here, everybody is together. That's generally part of something we've spoken about many times in different ways, the idea of transparency within the Torah. Everybody's at Sinai. When Paro tells the Jewish people who's going to go, says to Moshe and Aaron for a moment when he's ready to let them go, who's going to worship with me? And everybody's going to go together. There's an idea of everybody having a stake, everybody part of it. So we have this sort of this legal binding almost thing, public swearing in of the oath, the acknowledgement that this is coming from God in front of everybody else. When this was done, Aaron was washed and he was dressed. And this is something that's very, very important when it comes to the Kohanim. There was a lot of stress back in the book of Shmot about his clothing and the details of his clothing. And here too, right, for example, Pasuk Zayin, Vaitina Lavita Kutonet, Vayachoroto Bavneit, Valbeshoto Tamail, Vaitina Lavita Haifod, Vayachoroto Becheshav Haifod, Vayafod Lo Bo. You have to put the tunic on him, and he needs the sash, and put on his robe, and the ephod, and the decorative band which he has. And then it talks about the Urim v'Choshen, and the Urim v'Tumim, and the hat, etc., etc. Moshe has to do these things, and then put the oil on top of him. And these are not just honorifics to draw Kohen. They're almost like a spiritual interface. The role requires external structures that generate, in a sense, kedusha, one might say, right? We're more authentically ourselves when we step into a role. We can be ourselves, but we have to step into the role. We have to understand the transformation that is happening. And the other way, if a Kohen, the Gemara says, does an avoda without the proper garments, and he invalidates the avoda. And you might say, who cares? He did it anyway. But there is a procedure, there's a way that things are supposed to be done. And the garments aren't just for honor. They aren't just to make the Kohen look good. It allows him to to move into a role. I can remain myself, but I can put on clothing. And clothing is very important in the Tanakh. We talked about in the book of Breshit the idea of clothing, the stripping of clothing off of people. Talked about especially in terms of Yosef, right, where his brothers take his father gives him the coat of many colors, the Ketonet Pasim. It's stripped off of him when he goes down to slavery. So the clothing represents very much, especially with Yosef and with others, the going into a higher level. Right, then when he comes out of the prison, Paro gives him the fancy clothing and dresses him like an Egyptian. And so here too, this is symbolic, but it also is supposed to demonstrate something to Aaron, that he can walk into this role and he can wear this clothing. And that's important for Aaron. Aaron's a person similar to his brother who has a certain sense of humility. I believe we talked in the past about Hakrave. Moshe has to bring Aaron close. Aaron doesn't want to do that. Moshe has to bring him. Aaron has this, like his brother, has a certain sense of reluctance of taking this role. But perhaps, hopefully, you put the clothing on him, and he will, at least for a bit, dress like the part, and then grow into the part as well. Now, Aaron is not the only person who is anointed here in these verses. We also have the anointing of the Mishkan. Let me read to you from Psukim Yud and Yud Aleph here in Perek Chet. Vayikach Moshe et Shemen HaMishcha vayimshach et HaMishkan v'et kol asher bo vayikadesh otam. Moshe took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and all that was in it, thus consecrating it. Vayaz bimenu al mizbech sheva pamim vayimshach et hamizbech v'et kol kelev v'et hakior v'et kano l'kodsham. And he sprinkled some of it on the altar 7 times, anointing the altar, all of its utensils and laver with its stand to consecrate them. And it goes on and continues with that. And then he goes and he consecrates Aaron as well. The space, the makom, the location is first consecrated, and then Aaron is consecrated. And the Midrash talks about that it's kind of like creation itself, right? First, God creates much of the world, and what's the last thing that God creates in the creation story is humanity, Adam, or in the second version of the story, Adam v'Chava. And so we have here a sense of the creation of the space, the consecration of the space, and now the consecration of the Kohen who's supposed to watch that space, bringing us back to a similar idea in the creation story is one idea that we can take away from this. But also it's to mark that there are certain spaces that are qualitatively different, and they're not just physically different. We have to treat certain spaces are different than other spaces. We have an idea later on, Jewish life's not here, but Kedushat Beit HaKnesset, there's a certain way that you have to act in the temple. And part of what's happening here is that, right, so much of that is not, it's not something that's actually different, right? The same gold was used for the Egel Azav, was used for, it's not the same exact piece of gold, but you understand, I had 2 pieces of gold. One of them I could have given to the Egel Azav, and one of them I could have given to the Mishkan. We go and we make this place holy. It's not spontaneous. It's endowed. It's constructed deliberately. So we have the ability to make a space meaningful. You could say we have the ability to make a place meaningful and holy with the way we treat it and the way we act. And right, like we know this, think about in Jewish life what it means. You're getting ready for Pesach. Maybe you have your special Pesach tablecloth and your special Pesach silverware. I hope you have separate silverware for Pesach from the rest of the year, and your special Pesach plates, and you set it up and it's ready. And what you're doing with that is you're constructing the holiness deliberately to make it in a certain way. And that's what we have here as well. So we consecrate the space, and then the Kohen, we consecrate the Kohen who will be there. There's a very deliberate idea and act that is going on here. We have to prepare for the rituals. It's right before Pesach. One of the things that we know, of course, about Pesach is that Pesach is a holiday that's really a lot about preparation. The other holidays are about preparation as well. You certainly have to build your sukkah, but Pesach, the preparation is so much part of of the holiday, the cleaning the house, the koshering, the making of more food and different foods and preparing the symbols. And so the preparation, right? You sit down to your Seder and you take that deep breath. I mean, it takes work to build the sukkah, but it's nothing comparable to the preparation that's necessary to signify that this space in this time is different. We see that here as as well. Um, so okay, one more idea. We have a number of times in this verse, in these series of verses, the idea of God commanding Moshe and Moshe doing that which God says to him. So, for example, in verse 9, where Moshe is told to, at the end of putting all of giving the Kohen Gadol, dressing him in all of the clothing, Kasher Tziva Hashem et Moshe. And I'm just scrolling down in verse 13, bring Aaron closer and place the clothing on him and go do it, Kasher Tziva Hashem et Moshe, that Moshe did that which Aaron says it. It's repeated a number of times. And Rashi points out that Moshe did not deviate at all. The reason why it's emphasized and why it's said over and over again is there's no deviation. That's Rashi saying that Moshe is commanded and Moshe does exactly what God says to him. There are other commentaries, however, such as the Netziv, more modern commentary. Netziv lived in the 19th century, and he did something much more subtle. And what he says is, in moments of foundational religious creation, there's zero room for human improvisation. And right, which doesn't mean that later there won't be room, but right now at this foundational moment where we are consecrating our own, we need to do things exactly as God told us. And we can think about almost like childhood, right? The Bnei Israel are children. They're just getting out of Egypt. They are not yet adults as a nation. And when you're a little kid, your parents tell you what to do, and generally it's best to do it exactly as they told you. Later on, there's room for creativity. Later on, there's room for improvisation, if you want to put it as such. But at the beginning, we really need to do things in the exact way. It's easiest for me to sort of give like a sports analogy, because sports analogies sometimes are easy and good to give, which I try to tell my kids. I used to like to play basketball. I still like to play basketball. I just have to realize that I can't jump nearly as high as I used to. Not that I was ever able to jump that high, but try to tell my son. I try to tell my daughter when she wants to play. My younger son, you got to have the fundamentals. You have to know how to shoot the ball, how to dribble, how to take a basic layup. Once you know how to do the basic things the right way, then you can improvise. So here, Kasher Tziva Hashem et Moshe, Kasher Tziva Hashem et Moshe, Kasher Tziva Hashem Moshe. Moshe does exactly what's told of him, because this is getting down the foundations. You have the foundations, you have the fundamentals, you have the things that are there. Then all of a sudden, things open up to you and you can have much more improvisation, much more creativity in your basketball life or in your spiritual life or in your artistic life. I'm not an artist, but I think we spoke to an artist. They might say the same thing. I don't know if Deborah will say the same thing about training when she trains the service dogs. We got to get down the fundamentals, and then maybe after that we can go and we can teach them some of the other tricks. I don't know, or not, or she can tell us whether or not. She's for those of you listening at home, she is shaking her head. So we will conclude there, and have a great day, everybody.